Okay, this video I'm going to do something a little out of the norm. I want to introduce a new series of videos that I'm doing, but I also want to respond to another YouTuber whose video I saw. So I'm not really going to talk about movies at all in this video, or not much. For any viewers who are here only for movies, I will put the information about the new show at the start because it's still going to include movies. See what I mean? It's like so different. So this video is going to cover two separate things, but also be tied together by one theme: comic books. And I want to share with you some of my comic collection that I've been quietly gathering for my whole life. There are some real treasures to me, maybe not to many other people, but there are some real gems in here that we're going to get to. Outside of YouTube, I operate an old school brick and mortar comic shop that I'm sitting in right now called Metropolis Comics and Toys in Burnaby, British Columbia, which is right next to Vancouver in Canada for my out-of-town friends. We've been here for almost 15 years. Maybe another time I'll make a video, like a tour of the shop if anyone's interested. Let me know in the comments. But today, let's get to our two topics. So one, the new show is going to be called Graphic Adaptations, and each episode is going to cover either a comic that got adapted to the silver screen or movies that were adapted into a comic book and comparing the two. I have about 10 in this series that I want to do to start with for sure, like a season one. Each episode should be about 10 to 20 minutes or so look out for that. Please keep in mind, if you keep watching the rest of this video, that the new series, Graphic Adaptations, is going to include all kinds of different genres that will include European comics, but not be exclusively about European comics. So for example, the first episode that I'm going to cover is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie adaptation, right? So, but for the rest of this video, I'm only going to be talking about European comics. I have a few other ideas to bring more comic book related content to the channel, so I'm excited to share all of that with you guys. Okay, now for my second topic, I caught a few videos from this YouTube channel called Analog Comics. He has a bunch of great videos, all on comic books, and I wanted to respond to one of them here. And in doing so, share a little bit about myself. And I brought some props, the comics from my personal library at home. So in his video, he talks about the European size format and why it hasn't caught on anywhere else, and why this might be. I have the video linked below in the description, so you can see his video before if you want the specific one that I watched that I'm responding to. He's got a whole bunch of other videos. Check him out. I really like the channel. I don't know nearly as much as he does about European comics, which is one of the reasons I enjoy watching his videos. I feel like there's a real deficit of knowledge for me, at least, being Canadian, especially because stores here don't really carry those kinds of comics very much, and we'll get to that part in just a bit. So yeah, before we look at some of those questions, I thought I'd give my own brief connection with these books and what they meant to me growing up. My dad lived his first 18 years in Germany, so he's a first-generation immigrant, and he came to Canada in the 70s. He grew up with Asterix and Lucky Luke and others, and when he got here, he sought them out in the English translation, I think partly to help him learn English. And so I grew up with these albums in the house, and I still have all of them. So, you know, these are really old Dargaud, is it Dargaud, Dargaud? I'm not sure. Publishing, you can see up here. Yeah, these ones are quite old. I would say the 80s. This one's actually in German, so he brought this one over with him or found it here, which is a little unlikely, or family might have sent it to him when he got here. The pages are all yellowed. I've read these things like 1,000 times when I was a kid. I also brought this small edition that I thought Analog Comics. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, dude. I just saw the video and I thought, I want to tell this guy about how much I like comics, these comics. So this is a tiny edition. You can see that they did of Asterix in Switzerland. And this is vintage, so I'm not sure the publishing date of this one, and it's like falling apart too. 1970, English text copyright 1973. So you can see it's kind of like barely held together now in the middle. But yeah, so they did do these like tiny little editions, I guess, to see if they could break into that market. Albums are just another way of saying trade paperback or graphic novel in a way. The European format is usually a larger magazine size format. But there were other comics as well that I got to see. My mom was getting me North American comics from the flea markets and piles, and I was finding Tintin at the public library, which was great. I love Tintin. But there were lots of other comics that my dad had that were just laying around that were different. So let's see. So we got, here was some Tintin that I was talking about. Also, old copy of The Caliph's Vacation, which is an Is No Good story. One of my favorites, Walter Mellon. See that? And then, of course, we've got some Valerian here, German original, and then also the new Cinebook releases. And, of course, Lucky Luke here. And one of my favorites as I got older, not so much when I was a kid, but the Philippe Drouillet Lone Sloan stuff is incredible. Also, Mobius, which was his favorite artist of all time. I even have his poster up right now and framed in our house. Actually, 2 Mobius posters. I got his collection of heavy metal magazines and Valerian and Spirou and Fantasio and Jojo or Yo-Yo, I'm not sure for pronunciations. And yeah, it's incredible. So here we have some Spirou and Fantasio volumes that Cinebook was putting out. This one I brought just to show off. I kind of like, hopefully I'll do some close-ups on the interiors. This is a modern one. My mom's friend went to Germany on a vacation, asked if there was anything I want. I was like, just bring me some German comics that are out right now. I just want to see. I kind of felt that some of this was very anime influenced. You could see some of the Japanese influence on the European comics, which was really interesting. I never noticed before, but I really love that. I wish I got the English translation, but that's okay. And more Is No Good here and the English translations from Cinebook, as well as Gomer Goof, which he's got a bunch of different names. This is Jojo or Yo-Yo, or however you want to pronounce it. Depends on which translation, which country you're getting him. But yeah, I read all of these, loved them all. Now, Papa is actually a personal favorite that hasn't been printed in forever. Hold on a second. I tracked down, in a box here, I tracked down a couple extra copies online years ago because a few of my old copies were in tatters, and I mean tatters. This is the same team that created Asterix here. So the art is amazing and the characters have this great chemistry. It's about a colonial French officer who gets over his prejudice of Native Americans when he's taken in and becomes blood brothers with Papa, who's stronger and braver and smarter than our so-called hero. He doesn't run his mouth so much, so it's a bit of think of Big Trouble in Little China, where Jack Burton's sort of the idiot, and then his foreign immigrant friend is actually the smart one that gets stuff done. So you can see with this one, it's like it's really falling apart. Looks like the price was $2.99 on the price tag there. I don't know if you probably can't make that out. But the book is like just in tatters practically. So look, even the back, I don't even have the back cover. So that's how bad this one is. But I went out and I found there's only like 6 or so of these volumes. And I went out and found a couple other of the printings that they had done. There's no new printings. I would love for Cinebook to do these again, but there have been no printings of these. Rather than going through them all here, I'll just do some scans and put them up on the screen for you guys to see how cool this book is. So Goscinny and Uderzo. The Walter Mellon, he's an affable chap who gets into this crazy South American adventure, and I only have one volume that I've ever seen in English, but I read it over and over again. So remember, this is the Walter Mellon book. And again, the artist is Greg. I'm not really familiar with too much of what else Greg has done, but it's just classic, amazing goofball adventure stuff. Almost a parody of Indiana Jones for this one, being South American and everything. But yeah. So I really enjoyed that. Now, one of the reasons I think the American experience might be different than the Canadian experience with these books is our second language is French, thanks to Quebec. And so that's likely the bridge. Often when looking for these books only online or whatever, you will see lots of French versions published in Canada. English versions are a little harder to come by. Another question that you asked is whether the size is an issue for people. And I do think it is, but not entirely. If you grew up with them as a kid, then it'll feel right. But for some people, growing up with them as a kid might make the format resonate with those memories. It's easier to accept a black label DC book in a large format if it's dark and violent, but the Marzopilami is a very wholesome and Disney-like material. I think North Americans have a hard time dividing that line between what's childish and can also be enjoyed by adults, more so the way that in Japan, you can have all these different formats. I think Europe's a little closer in that sense, that you can have these different formats and genres and make something that's family friendly and adults can still appreciate it for what it is in that context. I really hope that nobody thinks that this is an ad for the shop. I could do one of those later if you want, but really I'm spending this video talking about something that I don't sell much of at all, case in point, Lucky Luke. So earlier I mentioned that I've had the shop for about 15 years. So why don't I just order these books? You bleeping gatekeeper? You bloody gatekeeper? Come on, sell the books in your own store. Okay, well, let's just look here behind me. Here. Lucky Luke, right? So I brought them in. This one is volume 8, okay? And all of these ones I paid for right here go up to volume 19. All right, I got multiple copies of them. And this represents, I'm not sure the exact year that these came out, but I'm willing to bet it's going to be around 2009, 2010-ish, okay? Because the price tags on the back show my Canadian price is the same as the American price, and that's about when the dollar was on par with the US market. I got an Is No Good here. It's just the new version of the Callous Vacation that I've got somewhere over here, I think, that I brought in. Here, look, here's a comparison. So this is the old original from the 70s or the 80s, and then this is the 2000s Cinebook version. Look at how old this one is. I don't know if you can see here, but like it's peeling. The plastic gloss on it is peeling off of there, and it's super faded and everything. Okay, so we got that volume there, goes up to 19, right? Ooh, that's lots of volumes, but how many volumes are there now? We cut to my personal library. We're up to 80. I've been bringing these all in for myself. So that's why they're not stocked. Like, I've got some in stock. They don't sell. I feel like Chapters, that's the big chain of books in Canada, has some Tintin and might have some Asterix, some of like the most mainstream stuff. Beyond that, not really. And local comic shops are more focused on North American stuff. But that didn't stop me from picking up this new edition of Lucky Luke, which is amazing. It's different, more mature, like a totally different art style, and honestly like a different tone than the original Lucky Luke's. It should have been updated, which is really cool. This guy, Matthew Bonhomme, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but anyway, he really killed it. This is sort of almost feels like a black label version, where it's, rather than adhering to the ongoing exploits of Lucky Luke in the format that it's known for, this one is like this artist's interpretation of Lucky Luke, and I would love to see more of this kind of stuff happening. I feel like they do it with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles all the time, or Batman, where you just give an artist with an eclectic style a free rein to do what you want in an Elseworlds tale, and really cool stuff comes out of that. Willy, meaning hour, right? This strip ran in the local newspaper for years, and okay, a couple more things that I wanted to share. As Wooly and his friends get into all kinds of trouble and fun around his town, often stories will end up with him sitting on his bucket at the end. You can see it here. He's always, because like he's getting grounded by his maw. This is a Scottish comic. It's held together by this tape. I think I found it at a flea market. It's black and white. The panels are just packed on every page. And sort of in the tradition of, is it Winsor McKay who did Little Nemo and Slumberland? Every page gives you a full adventure from one to the end. It kind of actually reminds me of Calvin and Hobbes. It occupies a similar time frame for the kid. It's his adventures. It's him getting in trouble. It's, you know, it's heartwarming and charming, but irreverent as well at the same time. And I've read this a whole bunch of times. I love the simplicity of the art, and it's really cool to see, like, what else is a Scottish comic? I can't really think of a lot off the top of my head, and especially nothing in this particular format. Now, you mentioned in this video the formats, the size formats of books, and I've got this great Valerian here that is in a small size. If we compare it to the larger format here, right? So this is a standard comic book size. So you'd think that maybe this would be something that people would like to check out in North America to make it more palatable. This was done by iBooks, which I'm not really familiar with. It is an English translation, and it contains 3 Valerian stories in 1 volume. Also want to point out here the flying cab, right? Because Valerian is inspiration for The Fifth Element, as well as Mobius's works. And as we remember, Luc Besson directed The Fifth Element, which obviously has huge influence from Mobius and Valerian. And then later Luc Besson goes on and actually does Valerian, which I didn't think was the greatest adaptation or casting or whatever. But so I've got this as well. But I don't think that made much of a difference, to be honest, with a small format. I think another reason why Americans don't take to the European style of album format is I think Americans see comic books as like a uniquely American creation. And in many ways, I think they're right to think that, especially if we include the superhero genre. But in that, we get stuck in the formats, right? One of the most American ways of assimilating new cultures is not to outright accept the new culture, but to assimilate that into America and claim it through homage. And I think that's what black label oversized formats are. You ever notice that a European artist will succeed when given a Batman title, but their own book that got them the attention of that publisher, not so much, like nobody really cares? And you can see it in translation of various printings while we play with the size formats, like these old Akiras that I had picked up recently. Somebody brought these into the stores and I just snagged them, right? And these are all done by Epic, which is a Marvel imprint from the 80s, I believe. And they're printed into a, bunch of issues formats. They're a little thicker than normal. They're not staple bound, they're glue bound. But it's obviously taking a Japanese medium and then adapting it into a North American format to see whether that would stick or not. I love these so much. It's so cool to see these. Europeans don't indulge the superhero formula. Most superhero books from Marvel and DC take place in America, or at least are Western-centric. US books do sprinkle a little bit of horror or science fiction or historical stuff for their titles, but mostly it's superhero stuff. And European artists make almost all sci-fi and fantasy and westerns and historical stuff and pretty much 0 superhero books. So narcissism probably plays a part that Americans want to see their own lives reflected in these wish fulfillment stories that they identify with for escapism. I'm just speculating. Another possible reason is that trade paperbacks or albums are fairly new for North American readers. When I was collecting in the 90s, trades were just starting to make an appearance. Graphic novels were making a name for the format as a viable reading apparatus. Apparatus? We'll go with apparatus. I think that this was because Watchmen and V for Vendetta and Sandman and Preacher were aging up the readership of comic fans, and now stories needed more than one issue to tell their story because it was more mature and complex. So the trade paperback was filling a need. Comics as single issues were too coveted as investments to collectors, while trade paperbacks were always only for reading the story. I never got the impression that European comics were collected in that way for monetary investment, but I really wouldn't know. So that collector market is holding the format back in a way, and also driving a market that now offers all these different covers to choose from, insinuating value where there isn't any and where scarcity is decided by publishers ahead of time. It's weird that with these covers, people have forgotten to not judge books by their cover, and yet here we are. And then I wanted to just end on mentioning a few other titles that I discovered more recently in my life. Not that recently, but not in my childhood. Books like Alone, that Cinebook's been translating, as well as Fantagraphics, right? Tarde, I believe it's Tarde. He does these brilliant, weird, they're beautifully rendered, but the stories are incredibly abstract and bizarre. Give you a taste of some of the art, put it up on screen for you as well. Yeah, I find all this stuff really charming. I didn't bring any Adele Blanc Sec, but I did bring some Yuko Tsuno, which is sort of like a female Japanese Tintin dealing with sci-fi concepts. Really dope. The Smurfs have been getting republished by paper cuts in these smaller volumes. They also do the large volumes as well, but it's cool to see them in any format. And I've discovered some new stuff that I don't know how old it is, but the Blue Coats. It's like during the Civil War in America, but like really funny. And Ian. This is a serious science fiction story about like sort of a cyborg. It's really well done, but it's also not very flashy, I wouldn't say. It's just well told stories. And last one is Orbital, which I think that Analog Comics was showing off as well on his channel, how cool it is. And also from Italy, Dylan Dog, which has been adapted into a terrible movie, but is really, really cool. This particular volume by Dark Horse as a giant compendium has Mike Mignola doing the chapter covers, which is great, but is this Italian Gothic sort of horror, weird adventure book, also very much enjoyable. Now, at first, I was buying anything like this because there had been such a drought since the 70s and 80s, but to be honest, now we're kind of rich with these volumes. I can't even keep up with them all. I had to give up on Lucky Luke. I just wasn't reading all the ones that were coming in. And despite that, and despite the DC Black Label format, I still don't see people flocking to the larger size. I think they want to, but as you said in the other video, people don't have shelves and boxes to accommodate them. So it feels like a whole new collection. And I think when you were right to say that it's in us, the collectors, who decide not to like the format for whatever reason. So that's it. That's the video. I really enjoyed sharing these comics with you guys. There aren't many people who I get to share this stuff with because everybody that comes in the store is mostly superhero or at least North American. But I've been collecting this stuff since I was a kid. Analog Comics, thank you for your work with your channel and the videos and all the effort you put out for them. I really enjoyed watching a bunch of those, and I'll see you guys next time.